Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. Temple Beth welcomes scholar-in-residence, Etgar Keret, in conversation with Professor David Meyers.
I just want to begin by saying a word about our beloved friend Baruch Link, because Terry reminded me when I saw her last that Baruch died in 2019. That was not an earthquake. That was Bob moving the lectern. And the period of time since Baruch died has been an extraordinarily tumultuous time. COVID, October 7th, Trump 2.0. And I'm thinking there may be a causal link to all of that's gone on in Baruch's absence, because, you see, he was a big man, and he provided a measure of equilibrium to the universe. And without him, the world is a little off kilter. And I mention that because I find your stories to represent the world a little off kilter. They don't describe the world that is, and they don't describe the world that should be, right? Somewhere between the real and the ideal. They very often describe a parallel universe, somewhat dystopian, off kilter. You know, in reading this, which I recommend to everybody, I can name the stories that I think have that quality. You know, A World Without Selfie Sticks, Solo, Autocorrect, The Future's Not What It Used to Be, Guided Tour, Present Perfect, Undo. They all kind of convey a parallel universe that's between is and should be. I'm wondering what you think of that. Do you intentionally try to create that world that is off kilter?
So first, I want to say that my mother died about the same time that Baruch had died, and my mother was like a center person in my life, and as I said, I write a lot as some kind of a thought process or understanding what I'm doing. So basically, I write 10 times more stories than I ever get to finish writing. And one of my stories, strangely, what you said about Baruch, was about a son that his mother started having a dementia. And parallelly, as she gets dementia, he sees that the word kind of functions less well. And he realizes that his mother was God. And he dreads the fact that when she'll die, everything will become even messier. So I think that this is kind of echoing these sentiments that you talked about. But for me, I think that sometimes that we're usually trapped inside the reality. We're usually trapped inside the story. And this story could be personal. I don't know, my son is no good. Or it could be national, saying, you know, I don't know, Trump or Biden, they're bringing this country down. Or, you know, and we lived our life through that story. So my idea of kind of trying to see reality fresh is taking a step to any direction, so you stop being inside the things that you're talking about, but you'll have some kind of an exterior vantage point. So many times it doesn't matter if I talk about the past, the present, an alternative universe, an invention that doesn't really exist. It kind of helps me to address the word as something that I can look at without feeling that I'm I'm the CEO of this place, you know, without this, and the ability not to assume responsibility to the world around you and just see it as somebody who was just born or an alien from outer space, kind of puts you in a position where you can see all those blind spots and where you can judge morally things that when you're trapped inside your narrative, you would never judge.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what one literary critic advised historians to do, to resist the impulse to engage in what he called backshadowing, which is to understand the past through the lens of a very predictable, in retrospect, present-day outcome. Don't overdetermine your retrodiction, your reading of the past. Be attuned to what he called side shadowing. Pay attention to all of the things that were neglected in the standard account, the standard historical account, that linear historical account. Because what's going on the side is the stuff of history. So it kind of resonates with what you're talking about.
It's kind of like that. I think, that we always, at least me, I'm a product of my parents' education or bringing or what I saw in them. And the way they would tell history had to do with the fact that they went through war as children. But it turned into an ideology. So, for example, whenever they would tell a story, and you're an historian, so you would know how wrong this. They would tell a story like this. They would say, one day I was sitting in the ghetto, and a tall man with big boots entered the room and shouted, Shabbos, And I say, hey, when was that? And my mom would say, is that important for the story? I said, yeah, but this man, was he an officer? And she said, is that important? Like, am I filling a report in a police station? Listen to the story. But what was his name? Who cares? Listen to the story. So there is something really that when I write my stories, they're not in a specific time. Many times, not in a specific place. Many times, the characters don't have name. But I'm just following what my parents had taught me that was the story. Now, I'm saying if I look at it in hindsight, they couldn't tell me the dates because when you're 7 years old in a ghetto, you don't know what the date is. And they couldn't tell me the name because the Nazi who came to the place didn't introduce himself. But so the idea was that if usually stories, we contextualize them, we say, okay, this is Louisiana in 1925, right after the First World War, something like that. And then we zoom in and say, and this is a guy. Then for my parents, the story always started from what happened. A dog ran to them. Somebody tried to shoot them. That was the story. And I think that what I was kind of indoctrinated to think, that if you bypass those kind of automatic setting, it's like if I come to you and I don't follow protocol, and I say, hi, how was your day? May I shake your hand? And I just come and be there. Then, maybe we'll French kiss. Maybe we'll wrestle on the ground. I don't know what's happened, but I can allow that to happen.
Yeah. And at the same time...
I'm going to win.
You're gonna,
I'm a good kisser.
Well, this is a good question. I don't know if you're going to... You are, but is the world going to survive? Because that's kind of an internal question in your stories. To me, very dystopian sense of technology. Very, very dystopian sense of technology, particularly AI and its capacity to remake the rules of the game and completely undo them. And so I have two questions. One is, are you, in the language of Silicon Valley, a doomer or a boomer? Which is to say, do you think AI is going to finish us all off or, open up untold new horizons for us to conquer? And I'm just wondering, I heard you yesterday and I've been reading. I can't get a clear sense of, sort of the grayish filter of your lens of the world because of your parents' Holocaust experience. So I guess I wonder, is that dystopian vision any part, a function of what you inherited from your parents?
So I often say that I wasn't raised in a family. I was raised in a group of partisans hiding in the forests of Ramat Gan. Because the idea was that, when I grew up, there was our family, and there were people outside saying all kinds of things. And our family knew what was going on, and we had to listen to what all those people are saying, because we had to live with them, and we had to survive. But the idea was that we didn't accept any kind of exterior authority. And I think that this had to do with the fact that my parents grew up in a time where if you would rely on people, listen to them, then you find yourself in Auschwitz. So the idea is that You break root. You make your own story. You make your own sensibility. You build yourself up from nothing, every day, every time. So I think that there is something...
And you let your children live the childhood that you didn't live.
Yeah. And I feel that this was actually immersed with a lot of optimism, almost like a childlike optimism, saying, I don't know about the word, but we know what we should do. The word may be horrible, but here there's somebody who will give you a hug, The word wants to attack us, but we're stronger, So the idea was that it was very reassuring. So there is a very funny This American Life interviews that I did with my mother, and Ira Glass went to 5 experts, like in economics, in historian and stuff, and asked them what's going to happen in the future. And the talk with my mom was named Nostrmamos. and my mom really had this confidence of almost like a child to say that she knows what's going to happen. And I said to Ira, let's interview my mom. She's not an expert or anything, but she's so confident that it will be nice. And there was something in the talk that she said, look, the way I see it, the future is going to be horrible. And now I'm talking about 10 years ago. She said, people will be lonely. They won't talk to each other. When they go out to the street, there will be blood in the street. Neighbor will turn on a neighbor. Houses will be burning. The things that you trust the most will disappear. And I said to her, and how will I be doing? You'll be doing amazing. They'll start adapting your work to films, and through that, people in the world will understand your genius, and then they'll start buying your books. And I have a feeling that up until now, you were dominant, like you've been published in more than 50 countries, but I feel that now it's the time of Asia. I see the books coming out in Indonesia and Malaysia and Afghanistan, and all those people that they don't like Jews, but they're going to read your books and they're going to like you, and through you they're going to and they say, yeah, but the word will burn. Parents won't talk to their children won't talk, and me, you do amazing. I think that you're going to do more freestyle too, because there will be something in the performance side that's going to blow up, and the word, everybody's going to die. And it could go like for hours. And I think that this is really, it was very funny, Ira cracked, But you know what? 10 years later, she was right. Sony just bought the rights for something, right, for one of her stories. So she's going there. And everything horrible that she said is actually happening.
Do you share that dystopian view of the world? Because are you a doomer? To go back.
No. I'm like, okay. So what I always say to my students, I say people who lived in the Dark Ages didn't know that they were living in the Dark Ages. There wasn't a title there.
No, they didn't say, we're so proud to be living in the Dark Ages. That's not what they said. Or the Middle Ages.
You didn't have a T-shirt, I survived the Dark Ages, So, but at the same time, what I want to say is that people who lived there had many choices. So I'm sure that there were many people who had the greatest time of their life in the Dark Ages, living on a hill with somebody they loved, with a dog named something that
Spot.
Yeah, a medieval name. I don't know.
Spottius.
Spotanus, and they had a great time, even though the word was going down the drain. And now, what I think is that one of our biggest problems today is that as if we're tied or anchored to the word, in that sense that when we get up, we're unhappy and frustrated and scared about things that don't affect our life in any way. Like if Greta in Norway can have a nervous breakdown because on the other side of the world, in a place that she has to look in Google, something horrible happens, then there is something, then she's doomed. She's going to make peace in the Middle East, but they'll kill a whale somewhere. Or she'll see on the internet a mother bad-mouthing her child. She'll never find her rest. And what I feel is that I am optimistic for every human being who chooses to get off the grid, who chooses not to say the most important thing for me is to do these things that will set the world right. But the most important things for me, is to look around me and help this elderly lady cross the street and give a sandwich to a homeless person. And if you live your life in this scope, we can all live an amazing life.
And your mother's prediction will come true, that you will conquer the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm working on it. I'm in LA. You know, it's a good point to conquer the world from.
Yeah. And Indonesia's next. So, in light of that, I mean, there's still kind of a disconnect of sorts between your kind of cheery vision of the possibility of the universe and the fact that almost none of your stories have a happy ending. Let's take intention, kavana. You have a guy named Yechiel Nachman. He's about to give up his kippah and payas, right? He lost faith. He goes to his Rebbe. And the Rebbe says, you got to daven with greater kavana. He does. And he gets his wish. 2 chatufim, 2 hostages are released. Comes back to the shul. The Rebbe says, see, I told you. He goes back, he davens some more. His personal life is transformed with that encounter in the supermarket. He goes home, he is lying in bed, he takes stock of wow, what a wonderful world I live in. Davening with kavana makes a difference. And you kill him off. He dies at that very moment. At that moment of acknowledging the wonderment of the world. Ma pitom. I mean, can't you give him a little bit of joy?
So you didn't say what happens next. You speak like a pathologist, but what after?
You speak like a mortician. I mean,
So after he dies, he goes to heaven.
Oh yeah.
And he gets to sit next to God and to talk to God. And Yechiel Nachman talks as much as I do. He talks a lot. Yeah. And even though he talks a lot, God always listens. He doesn't always understand what Yechiel Nachman's saying.
He never understands.
He never understands. But he never understands what Yechiel Nachman is saying. But he really likes Yechiel Nachman. He wants to understand.
He tolerates
He wants
him.
to help me. So I'm saying that, in this kind of binary thing, is it good or is it bad? Yechiel Nachman, in the end of the story, is very, very happy. The doctor who found him dead, she thinks it's a tragedy. Now, we can go with the doctor or go with Yechiel Nachman, but I go with Yechiel Nachman, and I think it's a happy ending.
Opinions will be divided on that.
I say let's
and
do it.
That's the beauty of literature, because I did not read that as a happy end. I said, give this Nebuch a little joy in life. No.
So let's do it.
Well, hold on. Do you desperately await Olam Haba so that you can
I can say that if you give me the choice between, let's say, I'm 58-year-old, dying 30 years from now, or dying now, getting a VIP ticket, sitting next to God, kind of really grinding him 24 hours a day. Give me a pistol, I'll shoot myself now. I think it's a great deal. I just want to ask everyone here, raise your hand. Would you want, when you die, have this kind of VIP gold ring thing, sitting right next to God and speak to him, even if he doesn't get anything? I would. Yeah.
As opposed to meeting again with the woman in the supermarket with whom you've had this intense flirtation, marrying for the first time in your life, and having the prospect of, a wonderful life, b'olam hazeh, in this world. So it's very much an issue of olam hazeh versus olam haba.
I can say, you go out with the Walmart girl, I'm going with God, okay?
Okay. All right. You are a pious soul, obviously. Which leads me to ask, do you pray? And do you pray with kavanah shlema, as you use the term in this book?
So I can tell the story of how I wrote Intention, which is, I think, all about that. Intention is one of the 2 stories in the collection that I wrote after the 7th of October. All those other stories were written during COVID and after my mother died, so it seems as if they were written after October 7th because they're very heavy, but they were not. And I wrote these stories because I think I said in some of the talks that writing has many functions for me. And that one of the functions that writing has for me is that when I obsess about something, when I'm really angry and obsessive, then it's usually somebody who annoys me. And what I do, I write a first-person narrative story from the point of view of that person. I've written 14 first-person narratives from the point of view of Benjamin Netanyahu. None of them became a masterpiece, but when I finish them, it really helps you from dehumanizing somebody. Because when you write a story, you have to be that person, you have to justify your decision. So what happened was that about 10 days after the 7th of October, I spoke with my sister in Mea Shearim. Now, those 10 days were a nightmare, like in an extent that I really can't explain. Somebody that we did a documentary together was kidnapped to Gaza and later murdered. People, I know, like my ex-girlfriend's brother and her husband were viciously murdered. It's really like everything was kind of falling apart. And I did all kinds of chores, not only visiting survivors, but, for example, I'm teaching in a university in Be'er Sheva, in Ben Gurion University, where Baruch was teaching, I think. So people would ask me to send my student to identify bodies in Soroka Hospital because their friends were missing and they didn't know if they were murdered or kidnapped, and they were hoping that they were murdered. So when I would call and I say, your brother isn't dead, they would cry because they were hoping that they would be dead to save them the torture. So it was very, very testing time with missiles shot at us and with me being in the front, reading to soldiers and meeting bereaved families. So I was really, it was a meltdown. I was seemingly, and at nights I would do interviews with European newspaper with journalists who would say that the 7th of October never happened, and I had to send them snuff films of somebody beheading a person with a shovel, so they believe me that there were atrocities. So I was really as crazy as I ever been, and I'm usually crazy, but I was crazier. And I talked to my sister, who is the nicest person in the world, and she talks to me about the war. Now, no missiles were shot on Jerusalem. She doesn't know anyone who's in the army. Like me, everybody I know is in reserve duty, So she doesn't know anybody in the army. She doesn't know any soldiers. For her, it's horrible what's going on, but it's like a fairy tale. It's like war in the Ukraine. And she says to me, it's so horrible that this is happening to the people of Israel, to the Jews, that I tripled my prayers. I kind of prayed 3 times, and I was very bitter. And I said to her, well, this doesn't work. Maybe you should pray 6 times, because everybody I know is dead. You're not praying well, And that's a really nasty thing to say to a religious person, and especially to a sister that I really love. But my sister, she's such a tzadikah that she wouldn't let it turn into a fight. She would just kind of take it and keep talking to me. And after a couple of moments, I said to her, listen, you don't deserve it. I'm in a state. I'm going to call you when I feel more normal. I'm just angry. It's not about you. Okay? And she said, sure. And I put down the phone and I sat down and I wrote this story. And for me, the story was, if I'll be in her mind, then I couldn't be as cynical and as mean as I was. And when I wrote the story, I said, okay, I won't be my sister. I'll be one of my nephews. And I write this story. And when you write a story, many times you say, I'm this character. I am a butcher. I'm this man. But when I read the story, I see that at some moment, my identification with the character is so great that I feel that I'm writing myself. And then I understood that basically praying is exactly like writing. It's this idea of assuming something transcendental that you have a dialogue with, and through that dialogue you understand where you're standing. So I thought to myself, why am I condescending my sister? I write stories to those imaginary readers who will get it. They probably won't buy the book, and even if they read it, will fall asleep in the middle. But I say, no, they're there. I'm talking to there. And what I get for that I articulate my thoughts and my emotion. And when my sister, in her turmoil of the war, when she prays, she basically does the same thing. Like, we can argue if God is there or not there, but for sure, when she prays, she understands her emotions and position the same way that I understand them better when I write.
You just made a very compelling case for the work of the historian, because now I understand the story a lot better. I understand the historical context in which you wrote the story. You wrote the story in the wake of October 7th, on the 17th of October, in the wake of this conversation you had with your sister, and it reads very differently to me than it would otherwise.
Well, I must say...
I wonder,
yeah.
Tell me what you're thinking, but how does it feel to have your work reduced to the context of the historian? Like Derrida would say, there's nothing outside of the text. There's no such thing as context.
Yeah. I can tell you a funny story about Derrida after this.
But, I look forward to it.
But I don't know. I mean... I'm sorry, I thought about Derrida. So
no, context. I read your story very differently after what you told me.
Yeah. So my life experience is that when I speak to people, they don't understand what I'm saying. Now, it's funny because I make a living out of speaking with this feeling that people really don't get what I'm saying. Like I'm saying, they get some of it. It's not you, it's me. Like my wife says, you talk for an hour, and then I say, Edgar, what do you want? So I know that there is something unclear about me. Now, the idea of writing stories was for me that if I write, the stories are condensed, I get to think about it, then people will get me. And I understood that even when I write stories, people don't really get me, but sometimes they get something underneath that, they get a feeling, they get a thought. I really feel that it's very rare that in my stories I read them the way that my readers read them. And I'm saying that really, I have a friend who said, you should come with every copy of a book and tell each and every one how you wrote each stories, and then you'll be a great writer, But I guess that's the limitation. And if you remember and have time, I really have a good Derrida story. Okay,
well, maybe we'll get to him now, because I want to share an insight that I had this weekend, really maybe in the wake of Danielle's excellent interview with you, conversation yesterday. It was kind of really revelatory, because I've always thought of you as an Israeli writer more than a Jewish writer. Your texts are not filled with, midrashic parables and obscure Talmudic references, a la Agnon, maybe even Yehoshua. But then something clicked. And I think this is connected to an interview I read of yours in which you mentioned two writers as particularly influential when you were in the army, I think, Kurt Vonnegut and Franz Kafka. And that made me rethink your work, because, Kafka we often think of today as someone completely suffused with the Jewish question on his brain, though the word Jew never appeared in a single story of his. The word Jew did not appear once. And yet we read his work as manifestly Jewish, as a profound reflection on the Jewish condition at a time of great social, political, and technological change, what we might call Jewish modernism. And a century later, I'm asking myself, especially since you mentioned Kafka, should I be reading you as a Jewish writer, reflecting on the Jewish condition, but in a kind of postmodern idiom, not a modern idiom? You have, the characteristic features of Kafka: abyssal dystopia, some strange twists, indirect glancing engagements with something that could resemble the Jewish condition. So do you feel yourself writing in the lineage of Kafka, in that kind of mode of Jewish writing?
For sure. I think, again, that when we talk about what it means to be Jewish, then one of the major things that I think that I see in Jewishness is the reflexiveness, the ability to reflect, to be in the story, but also to see the story. It's kind of like a Don Quixote kind of insider-outsider view. And I've always felt that Kafka had that Kafka kind of was not trying to tell the story of what's going on, but he was trying to find the story. So in his writing...
Before the law, right?
Yeah.
Before the law.
Yeah, so, and I want to say is that there is something I feel that people always misread Kafka. It's funny because in our class, as I said, Shalom Ostrander gave a talk about Kafka, and what he showed, which was pretty amazing, that we all know the image of Kafka. There is one photo of Kafka that we all know, that he looks very sad with wide eyes. He looks kind of not well, and
it hangs in my office. Yeah.
So Shalom showed us 20 different photos of Kafka. He's laughing and smiling in all of them, sometimes with a cigarette, sometimes with a drink. But he said, we want to remember Kafka as somebody who's kind of dramatic and tragic and apocalyptic. But for example, you know that my good friend Daniel Kellerman, he's like an expert for Kafka. He teaches in NYU. And for example, he said that the trial, the story, the book, The Trial, that everybody associate with dark tyrannies and stuff, he wrote it because there was a situation in his life, if you read his biography, you probably know, that he was about to marry a girl, and he would write letters to another girl. And that other girl told his fiancée that he's writing letters to her, and basically they ambushed him. They said to him, come to a coffee, and both of them were sitting, and they were saying to him, what you're doing is wrong. And he said, why? He said, but I just wrote her a letter. No, you're not supposed to listen. You wrote this sentence. I can read it as if you're flirting with her, And basically there was something about this situation of being kind of tried for something that he didn't understand that kind of brought this book. So many people say, this is about the rise of fascism after. No, it's about his girlfriend giving him a bad time, So
it is also about the darkness and the labyrinthine nature of the modern technological world that calls into question the very idea of progress. But it must be said that when Kafka read his stories in his little circle, Prague Circle, with Max Brod and others, he was greeted with explosive laughter. People found the stories, his intimates found the stories hilarious.
So I must tell you a story that, that I never tell this story because I have a feeling that it's difficult to believe. But the first reading I've ever gave, it was of this book. It was in 92. It was the first reading in my life that they paid me for. And it was in a kibbutz, I think it was Kfar Tavor. And there came a guy with a car. They said they're going to give me a check. I was very, very excited. I came there. I did this reading. I don't think it was a very good reading, but the people in the kibbutz were okay and very polite. And when they left, there was this very, very old woman. And she said, you remind me of someone. And I said, what? She said, not in Israel. I was a Hebrew teacher of this guy that used to write. And he once gave me a story. It became very famous, this story. About the person who turns into a cockroach? I said, Franz Kafka. I said, you know him. and I said, so when he gave you the story, what did you think? She said, it was so funny. I cracked in laughter. It was so funny. And I said, and what Kafka said to you when you laughed? And he said, I don't remember her name, let's say Marta. He said, he put a hand on my shoulder and he said to me, Marta, you're a very healthy, mentally healthy woman. You're very sane.
Yeah. Well, apropos of Kafka studying the Hebrew language, I'm curious to know what your relationship is to the Hebrew language. Baruch Link was a great lover of the Hebrew language. Many of your colleagues and predecessors revere, sanctify the Hebrew language, see in it endless possibilities, notwithstanding how relatively small it is in quantitative terms. Bill Cutter wrote an article about Sholom's famous letter to Franz Rosenzweig, which spoke of the apocalyptic thorn that was embedded in the Hebrew language, and you pull it out, and out rushes all of this overwhelmingly powerful messianic content. I've often seen you as like a citizen of the global republic of letters. And I don't have a clear sense of what you think. Like, what praise and sense of reverie do you lavish upon Hebrew? Like Borges spent a career talking about the letter Aleph, right? Yeah. How would you describe your relation to the Hebrew language?
I love the Hebrew language. I think about the Hebrew language and I'm immersed in it. And I must say that, that when you live in times like now that are very threatening and you contemplate about the idea that maybe I won't live in Israel, then the thing that scares me the most, more than anti-Semitism or the weather, would be the fact that I won't communicate with people in Hebrew. That's the thing that scares me the most. And I want to say that there is something about my hold of a language or everything is that I hold something, but I let go and then I hold it in another way. I hold something and then I let go. I always kind of change my hold. And Hebrew is a wonderful language to keep this freedom, because when you get on a taxi and you say, I want to screw mas הכנסה. So, what's
income tax, yeah.
Income tax. So, driver, please give me a receipt. You say, ten li Kabbalah. And we all know what Kabbalah is,
Give me a receipt.
So so it's everything is like, it's both pragmatic but spiritual and transcendent, So I feel that there is this kind of thing that you feel in the Hebrew language, that it's as if like we take the tools that were in the temple, and take them, I don't know, to build an amusement park. So I say, yeah, give me the Torah. Pooh, I need to put a nail here in the wall. Yeah, give me, So there is something about this kind of sacred and profane that keep being mixed.
It's fantastic.
That it kind of makes me feel that I can, if I want, I can choose and live very mundane life, but the transcendence of my existence is always there in the language.
Yeah, I mean, you've just given me the idea for a short story that you'll write called Ten li Kabbalah, where the taxi driver is a great mystic, who says, you want Kabbalah, I'll give you Kabbalah. All right, let's turn our attention to very sober matters that have occupied us for the last 2 years, October 7th and its aftermath. So one thing you did was you and Shira went to communities in the immediate wake of the massacres and read and were present. And I'm wondering what that experience was like and what, I guess more generally, I want to get to sort of another experience you had that you wrote about in the New York Times. But what did you see then and what do you see now in terms of the health, the resilience of Israeli society?
Yeah, so I must say that it's really like two parts, because after the 7th of October, I would say for the first 4 or 5 months, it's like a totally different story from what went on, over after that. Now, the feeling was, I remember that the first time we reached a community, it was the community of Kfar Aza, then we were not the only people who came to help. So there were always people kind of coming to help. And the drill was that, let's say, if you're an artist, you come, and this person who helps you find a place where you can set chairs. She calls people. She asks them, what do you want? It's really like, it was so chaotic. I have a prescription for medical marijuana. So I had roll joints, and I would go around and say, anyone wants a joint? It was really like kind of... And then they say, no, but take my kid. And I said to the kid, I read your story. He says, I hate stories. I said, what do you want? Teach me yoga. Okay, yoga. It's really like... So it was really, really kind of chaotic. And when we came to meet the Kfar Aza people in Shfaim, the woman who helped us was a very tall, impressive woman, and she held a baby in her hand. And the baby was asleep. And she did everything, like put the chair, do everything, with the baby in her hand. She didn't put the baby aside, like as if it was like a wristwatch or something. And she was able to do everything, and we did the event, and it was very, very moving. And then we went to the car, and I said to her, "What a wonderful baby you have! You know, like we've been here like for 2 hours. She didn't even cry. She didn't ask for anything. What's her name?" And she looked at me with wide open eyes, and she said, "I don't know." And I said to her, "What do you mean?" She said, "Just before you came here, there was a woman who was breastfeeding, and they just came and they told her husband was murdered, and she fainted. So somebody gave me the baby, and then you came, and I forgot I was holding it. I should bring it back." And I think when I tell this story, I think that the feeling was that you don't understand reality. Like I come and I say everything is messy, but here's this woman protecting her child, everything is okay, and say no, you don't get it. So I think that it was this kind of feeling of disorientation. And I'm saying if I have to kind of try and find a metaphor for myself and maybe for the Israeli society for the complete 2 years, it's like falling down the stairs. Now, I don't know how many of you had this wonderful experience. I'm always thinking about stories when I walk. I fell at least 3 times downstairs, broken nose, broke something. So the thing is that when you fall down the stairs, you just say, "I'm going to hit another stair. Something painful is going to happen. I should protect my teeth. Oh, this didn't hurt so much. Oh my God, not the leg, you know?" So there is something about the way that you follow reality that you never really truly kind of capture it. You're not telling yourself a story. It's just a series of anxieties and hope and feelings you don't control anything in your life. And I want to say that you know that the deep yearning that I have is not that we will lose Netanyahu or have this or have this. It's that we will be able to gain our equilibrium, that we will be there on the bottom of the stairs, asking ourselves what's broken, trying to stand up. You know, this is where I want us to be. Not in heaven, not in...
That's for Yechiel Nachman.
That's what Yechiel Nachman was praying for. And by the way, the thing about the story is Yechiel Nachman, in the beginning, he prays that all the kidnapped will return. Yeah. But the rabbi said you don't pray good enough. And when he prays better, he actually prays that all the kidnapped will return, that the war will end, that no children will die in Gaza, that the world will find comfort. So there is something about the prayer that stops from being a functional thing. Give me that. I want another thing. It becomes a different perspective. And that's one thing that I always feel that I have in writing. You know, I can write a story about why do the people in LA don't give me pancakes when I read, you know. But I'm saying if it would be...
Because we give you bagels.
Yeah, fair enough. But that's in the sequel. But I'm saying, but if I really write this story, then I'll get to something that is more essential about human beings, about my expectations, about people not understanding each other, about not that I shouldn't eat fattening things. I don't know. I get somewhere from this very, very specific thing.
Okay, so one snapshot of your post-October 7th existence is this image of Israelis falling down steps. And I'm seeing, visualizing you know, going around this devastated community of Kfar Aza, reading, handing out joints, doing whatever you can to provide some measure of consolation. And there's another snapshot about which you wrote in an op-ed in the New York Times this past August, in which you and Shira are standing on a corner in Tel Aviv holding pictures of Gazan children who were killed by the IDF. as were people, myself included, on a street corner in Culver City every Sunday at 11 a.m. What you describe in that op-ed, I mean, I'm just curious about your reflection upon that experience. But what you tell, because you're, just a ceaseless storyteller, is about the guy in the swimsuit who comes up and starts to try and engage you and provoke you. And, it's a silent vigil, so you don't go for the bait. But what it prompts you to think about is we live in this Tower of Babel, this Migdal Bavel. So I wonder if you can sort of go back to that moment and say what you think we need to know about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, so I think our world, has many problems, but the ones that I feel the strongest, attacking me in my existence is that of selective empathy. Now, and I'm saying it with great sadness. They made a poll, and 78% of the people in Israel say they feel indifferent to suffering of children and women in Gaza. Now, that's not Jewish, I must say. It's like some of those people who say that they're my friend, but they're less of a Jew when they feel that. Now, what I want to say is that when you talk to those people, mostly it's something emotional, it's pain, it's a disappointment, it's whatever. But what they keep saying is that there aren't any uninvolved people in Gaza. They were all happy when people were kidnapped. They were all happy in the massacre. Whatever happens, they deserve it. Now, I'm, as a writer, having left-wing opinions. I'm blacklisted in Israel. My wife and I get death threats from Jews. It's not a pleasant experience. But what I want to say is that when I go overseas, I'm boycotted for being Israeli. I was supposed to have a tour with Ira Glass, telling stories about my mother in Australia. It got cancelled because I'm Israeli. I went to the Edinburgh Festival. They cancelled me. Why? Because they wanted me to kiss the ring, to sign a document saying, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And I said to them, I'm a writer. I say things. I don't sign on things that other people say. So they said, okay, so you're out of here. So I'm saying this is the same kind of selective empathy. When I see the attacks on Israel, I really like, for me, like the epiphany of that is somebody like Sally Rooney. I don't know if you know her. She's a writer. And basically, let's say, she says, like, no festival should accept any writer who had served in the IDF, like stuff like that. And I'm saying that really, I tell you something about Israel. I don't know. I'm sure that many of you are to the right of me. Some of you may be to the left of me. But I tell you something about the economy of Israel, because we're in the US and we like to talk about money. So since in these 2 years...
Not to feed stereotypes.
All of you. There are no innocents. You're all capitalists. So I'm saying, I saw your Teslas. Don't tell me that you don't care about money. What I want to say, what was I talking about before?
No idea. Yeah. You were going somewhere important. Sally Rooney and
what?
Sally Rooney. You were talking
Sally
about
Rooney. Yeah. So what I say, the economy of Israel. Okay, I'll give you a little kind of insight of the economy. Was going down the drain in those 2 years. My wife, she's a filmmaker. She has money for a film, but she needs to make a co-production. No European organization, none of them, will ever put money in a film done by Israeli unless it's a film saying that we're doing a genocide, okay? So filmmakers, they can work. They change their jobs. They do pizza deliveries. They can work. Artists are suffering because artists like me, we're boycotting. I teach in Ben Gurion for 20 years. I'm not allowed by the mayor to speak in a public place in my country. So I'm saying all the people in high tech, they're being boycotted. All kinds of pensions, they don't want to put money in Israel. But there's 20% of the Israeli society that is flourishing. People who are now becoming billionaires. And that's the weapon industry. Because, Sally Rooney can boycott me, but she should boycott the people who invent the missiles that killed so many people and that it was so good that now the entire world is buying them. So basically we live, you know this expression, tzaddik ורע לו, רשע וטוב לו? So now we live in an area where, as a professor, I'm being boycotted, even though all the professors are against Netanyahu. As an artist, I'm being boycotted, even though that Netanyahu's regime, they canceled the Academy Award because a movie about an Arab child won. So when I go outside, we all get hit. I can't have an essay in a magazine because I'm Israeli. But if you're a weapon dealer, you sell to all the country. Iron Dome, oh my God, no country can have it. So Sally Rooney would have her coffee protected by Iron Dome, the same people who manufactured the bombs that killed more than 20,000 Palestinian children, but she boycott me, who's doing a silent vigil. Now, this is the stupidity of our world, and this is what I feel is the Babel Tower metaphor. It's basically, we're standing here, and we want to touch the sky. We want to have a world where everybody's tolerant, but at the same time, thinks exactly like us. We want the world to accept our will without us forcing our will. But next to us, there is a guy with a diarrhea, drooling, asking us to give him help. But no, you're stinking. We want to go there, to this perfect place where transgenders will live among us and nobody would make jokes about them. But there is a guy bleeding in the street. Leave me with this guy. We want to go, look at my Facebook. Everybody's liking me. So this is really this idea that Facebook is like this Tower of Babel where we build this kind of thing that keeps looking upward to this promised land while we keep trampling on the feet of everyone around us.
Yeah, I just want to say that the predicament you've just described is a predicament that some of us know very well here as well. Very, very well. Too Zionist for some, too anti-Zionist for others. But it seems to me what we lose sight of is what we always have to uphold. We always have to uphold the dignity of all human life. Like, not just when it's my team or, when it involves trashing the other team. The dignity of all human life. And it's very hard to do that in the wake of massacre, but it seems to be our obligation.
But I tell you words of wisdom that I heard from a settler, okay? Because when the judicial reform started,
Who?
He's from Tkoa. His name is Shivi. I don't know if you know him. He's the son of Rabbi Fuhrman.
We know.
So basically, I was in some kind of an activity that was against Netanyahu's conduct. And then this guy comes, a settler, okay? Like with a beard.
From Tekoa.
From Tekoa. But you can see, like a settler, tzitziot outside, a pistol, all the deal. Yeah, I come to demonstrate against the judicial reform. It's not democratic. Before he gets there, 2 policemen jump on him and say, "You come to give trouble?" He said, No, I come to demonstrate. He said, "Don't fuck with us. You came to give them trouble?" He said, No, I'm against it. And there is a big scene. And he said to me, I come every week. In the end, they get used to me. They say, that's the guy. They won't stop me anymore. And when we spoke, he quoted something that his father had told him. That he said to him, "How does a bird fly? It takes her wing all the way up. And then it takes her wing all the way down. But if she wants to go up, why does she take it down? Because you have to take it to opposite direction to create this kind of a uplifting wind that will take you up. You can't just go like this. You have to go like this and like this, sideways, to all those things to create this elevation effect. And in a sense, it means that there is a belief in the power of paradox and of contradiction and not submitting to a highway one that will take you all the way, but basically doing a U-turn and going there and doing stuff that doesn't make sense, but while making this trail, you know who you are and you acknowledge the complexity of the world that you live in, as opposed to holding a sign, the same sign, hating the same people, not seeing anything in them. That's not sophisticated and not Jewish.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. We're going to open up for questions just a minute. I have one, and depending on long you answer, two questions, which is to say likely one more question.
Okay, I'll give two short ones for the price of one long one.
Wow, as the Metzia. This question I told you yesterday, I have a good opening question for you, but it turns out it's kind of a closing question. And it's about your name, which seems to be, it would be a good name in an Agnon story, because Agnon used names to convey meaning, like, Adon Charif, right, Mr. Spicy, or, what would we say, hot-headed. Etgar Keret. Etgar, okay, challenge, Keret, a biblical word.
A big city.
A big city.
Yeah, I was saying yesterday.
Can we say of you, Kishmo Kenhu, as is his name, so is he? How do you read your name?
No, so I was saying yesterday is that basically the literal meaning of my name in English is urban challenge, and that it's strange to pass your life carrying a name of a pair of sneakers, But I must say that I carry this name. It's not a heavy name for me, but I carry it as some kind of a legacy from my mother. I always say that when my father came on an illegal boat, it was named Theodor Herzl, which makes sense. When my mother came on an illegal boat, it was called Lo Tafchidunu. You will not scare us, but it's more like don't fuck with us, Yeah. So this was my mom's boat, and Etgar is really like saying, I didn't bring you here, to be good looking and and drink spritz. I brought you here to do stuff,
Okay.
And I'm happy with that.
All right, so that relates to my final question. Then we'll open, which is, what is your job or calling in life? Is it to be a storyteller? Is it to be a clairvoyant, a Navi? Is it to be a physician of the soul? What's your job in life?
I really don't know, and I hope that I'll never know. I really feel that for me there is something about confusion and uncertainty, and sometimes contradiction that makes me feel that I may not know what's right, but for the moment, I'm not in the wrong.
So you are not a Moreh Nevuchim. You are not a guide to the perplexed.
No, but I really believe, that very much like what I think that there was something in the Kafka process, or maybe in the Socratic process, is basically this idea that you admit to yourself that you don't know much. It's as if, they say, כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, okay? It's a narrow bridge, and the most important, not to be scared. Okay, so I don't know how not to be scared, but I do know that there is a difference if I pass this bridge, holding to the railing, or counting on myself. And I feel that what happens is that the world becomes more and more intimidating. And those people that they go pay $3,000 for a vacation, and then they go on the bridge and one hand after the other, and and then when they get and people say to them, wasn't it a beautiful view? And you say, what view? I'm sweating. I don't want to live my life this way. I don't want to kind of feel my hand has to hold to something. I was just sitting yesterday in the hill with a good friend of mine, and he said to me, I would never let somebody who voted Trump come to my house. I said to him, my best friend is a Trump supporter. We're friends since I'm 3 years old. When I came from the U.S. last time, I bought him this sweatshirt, Make America Great Again, so he can troll people in his neighborhood, because I think that people are a set of things, and you agree with them about something, and you don't agree about other things. But to say, I will not talk to somebody who votes Trump, or I will not speak to a Democrat, or I will not speak to somebody who voted Bibi, or I will not speak to somebody who didn't vote Bibi, it's holding to the railing. And I'm saying it's really like we only get to live once. We only get to come to the Niagara Falls once. So let's make something out of it, you know?
Take the leap. Take the leap. Okay. Okay, we're going to open up now for questions. We have about 20 minutes.
I want to say that there are many questions on your blind side, just giving you a tip.
There are. Indeed. I'm going to let Terry decide. Okay. There are questions over there. So, and over here. The B'nai David crowd is well represented over here. I'm not so sure about that. But and we will talk to them either way.
So, first of all, could you tell us the funny story about Derrida?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if this is too personal a question, so feel free not to answer it, but does your sister in Mea Shearim, does she and her family read your stories or not?
So aside from the second one, then they don't read my stories because they're not allowed to. I actually, my first children book, which is called Dad Runs Away with the Circus, the dedication is from my nephews in Yiddish. And the reasons that one of the reasons that I wrote this book was for them, because they knew I was a writer, but they could never read me. So when I wrote this book, in my contract, it was written that the illustrator has to make one kosher copy, that everybody has yarmulke, no short dresses, you know. She even deleted a goy, you know, from the frame. Everything was perfect, and I gave it to my sister, and she gave it to a rabbi, and the rabbi says, you can't read it, the children can't read it. And I said, why? And she said, why? And he said, because in our word, Dad never runs away with the circus. So, but the thing about it is that because my sister, she's Ba'alat Tshuva for many years, she keeps being excited and proud whenever she meets somebody who's Ba'al Tshuva. And when they discover that she's my sister, they say, oh my God, he wrote this amazing story about. And then she comes and tells me the stories of mine that they told her. And there is something so endearing about it. It's really like that what she gets in the end, it's not the story or the plot, but this kind of excitement that had to do with her brother. So she doesn't read my stories, but it's not a tragic story. You know, we found our way. And the Derrida story, okay, I try to tell it short, but it's really a crazy story. So right after September 11, they made this big conference in Stavanger, Norway. It was called Axes of Evil, Axes of Hope. And in this place, I both gave a talk, and Derrida was supposed to give the closing speech, and I was supposed to be on a panel, which was called The People Who Write in Troubled Corners of the World. And there was a Serbian writer there, I think Egyptian writer, two Palestinian writers, and me. And then a day before the event, I get a note saying, we changed your panel. It will not be in 12, it will be 2 p.m. And you are in a panel, I'm just trying to remember, I don't know exactly, like people who began, women who began writing after giving birth. So I said, okay, this is going to be tricky. I understand that there is some kind of a technical issue, but as a storyteller, is there a story behind this? And they say, yeah, the Palestinians didn't agree to sit with you on stage. So I said, okay, I'll try to talk about my birth experience. We had the event, and then Derrida came to give the closing speech, and it was on a very specific topic. And he came and he said, I prepared the lecture, but you don't deserve my lecture. You bunch of, dishonest, cowardly Norwegian pretending to, and everybody said, hey, Jacques, calm down. And he said, no, I'll tell you something. I heard that you arranged a panel with 2 Palestinians who refused to sit with the Israeli, and I want to address those Palestinians. Who are you? And, one of them got up, the other one was smarter, he didn't get up, So he said, so you come here and you say that you want peace, but in the end, when you're asked to sit with the one Israeli that is against the government, that is short, with buck teeth, he could never occupy, and he says, I want peace. And you say, no, we don't want to sit with him, but we want peace. Who are you fucking with? How stupid do you think I am? And basically, it was really like a big riot, because if there's anything that Scandinavian don't like, is people telling them that they're not perfect. So it kind of broke the event completely, but they wanted to have closure. So they said to Derrida that Derrida, the two Palestinians, and me will have a breakfast together. And we had a breakfast, and it was a very nice experience. He was this energetic guy, like, he was already had cancer, but he was very, very... And the two Palestinians were really, really nice. And then when we ended this meeting, he said to me, and you, like, I talk about you, but what the hell do you do? I said to him, I write short stories. He says, give me a book. And I take a book, and give him a book. He said, thank you. I said, do you want me to autograph? He said, no, I just want to read it. And leaves. And then one of the Palestinian writers says, I would like a copy too. And I said to him, I gave Derrida my reading copy. I don't have any other copy. And he looks at me with this really killing look. He said, sure. Okay, you don't have another copy. Have a nice day. And he gets up and leaves. And I go to the organizers of the people and say, get me his address. They say, we're Scandinavian. We can't give you people's address. I say, listen, you fucker, you give me his address. You put me on a panel where I had to talk about my giving birth to a baby. I lied for you. Give me this guy address. I don't care. I said, okay, calm down. He gave me the address. And the moment that I got to Israel, I sent him a book. And I was hoping that he'd write back and say, oh, I'm happy that you really wanted to give me a book. But he didn't write back. And then a year later, you thought it was the end. But with my stories, it's never the end.
Could this be a happy ending? But just one.
A year later, I get an email from this person, and he says, read your book, very good book, translated your book to Arabic, want to publish it here. I think that a lot of shit is going to happen if I do that. But the book is good. I want to do it. And I said, sure. We started being in touch, and I realized that his son was killed by IDF soldiers. His son was unarmed. He was shot to death. And he said, I didn't want to sit in stage with the Israeli because you killed my son, and you were in the IDF. But when I read your book, I thought maybe you're okay, And basically, they prepared the translation, and they would have a date. And the date that they wanted to release it, it was a day after the assassination of Sheikh Yassin. So he said, I can't do that. They'll kill me, Let's wait for a month. And then, a day before that, we assassinated another guy. And I killed some children. So he said, I think it's a bad timing too. And then they picked the third date, and the man died. He had a heart attack and died. And I talked to the publisher, and the publisher said to me, by this date, you and your people, you're probably going to kill some more people, but I don't care anymore. Let's just do the book. And I said, but can we dedicate it to this man? And he said, yeah, I'll add it. And they published the book, and it came out in Ramallah. And I called the publisher, and I said, how is the book doing? So he said, I don't know. So I said to him, what do you mean? So he said, we're out of print, and at this stage I'm trying to understand if people are reading it or if the Hamas bought all the copies and burned them.
That's a great story. That deserves applause.
Over here. Yes, hello. With regard to the story, Kavanah, I don't understand why you made God to be a God that doesn't understand what his name, Rachmiel, is telling him. I read the story as if this is a mockery, and that in fact it's like the Wizard of Oz. This is a God who doesn't understand what's going on in his world, and the prayers, like go pray, brings you to a God that doesn't understand anything. Why did you do that?
Because I want to make you angry. No, well, my reading of this is that the entire story is about the nature of prayer, and that if we'll be able to articulate what we want in a selfless way, God would get us. So if God doesn't get Yechiel Nachman, it's only because of his diction. If Yechiel Nachman would learn how to speak, God would understand him. But you know what? Even without understanding him, God loves and respects Yechiel Nachman. And I think that for me, this idea of learning to pray better is the idea of learning to understand ourselves better and know our faults and know when we are not understood and know when we just think that we're right and we are not right. And when we reach there, believe me, God would understand every word you're saying. You're just not there yet.
The same story. It's amazing. And I read it the way you suggested at first, which is the last line means even when God didn't understand him, he honored him. But David read it as he never understood him, and that's the way you understood him as well. That doesn't seem, not what it says, I think.
I knocked my teeth of excitement that I have an ally in this audience. And I have big teeth, so you can't get around it. So, but no, but what I wanted to say, if the statement is not about God's intelligence, the statement is about God's a huge love for humanity. So when God looks at Yechiel Nachman, he says, this guy is trying. I like him. He really wants something. I wish I would understand better, but I'm rooting for him. And for me, in this kind of interpretation, God would make this word perfect if we get our shit together, and he's waiting. He's patient. He can wait forever. But it's on us, not on him.
I think we have time for two questions. One, and then in the back.
Real quick, you mentioned an older brother. Does he read your books? And is there anything about him you want to share? And also, you mentioned you were in the IDF. If you want to share anything about that, or do they read your books also?
Yes, so my brother is the eldest. As I say, my family is really, it's my, I don't know how to say in airport, they're my hub, Everything that I am is because of them. My brother is a genius, a certified genius. He did his final exam when he was 15. He had a BA in math and computers when he was 17. He was very right-wing in his youth, and in the army, using his brain, he helped bring down an espionage plane flown by 2 Russian soldiers who supported Syria. And when the plane brought down, it burned. So the people in it, the pilot and the navigator burned, and they heard them shouting on the radio. They heard them shouting while they were dying. And after this experience, my brother became extreme left, and he dedicates his life for coexistence of Palestinians and Israelis. He's in a movement called Standing Together, and he's a chief drummer. It's like being a cantor in a synagogue.
That guy?
Yeah.
At Kaplan?
Yeah.
That guy?
Yeah, with the white hair.
He's something.
He's good. Yeah, and I'm saying,
good.
Going all the way from being a high-tech guy who could earn tons of money to being a drummer who gets constantly beaten and arrested by Ben Gvir's police, So, that's a story I can appreciate.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Sorry, and that my service. So again, I think I there was something about an army. I once did this sketch for the Israeli TV about the IDF, and it's this guy saying that the problem with the IDF is that they have a monopoly. Everybody has to go to the army, so they don't care. Like, the food could be bad, they can shout at you. What can you do? And at the moment that they open it to other armies, that you say, I'm going to the Foreign Legion. No, really. They give you a leave every 2 weeks. Then maybe we can control that. Now, I think that there is something about me that I don't like to be forced to anything. Like, if you forced me to do a good thing, I'll feel bad about it. I like to feel that things are coming from me to the exterior and that I'm not complying. And that's why the army service was very difficult for me. I was punished many times, got detained and all those kind of things. And at the same time, there was something in the army that kind of taught me how to socialize in a way that I was able to avoid all my childhood. So when I look at my army service, these were difficult years, but this was the time when I started writing and discovered my inner voice, and that it was the time where I had to be in so many conflicts that defined to me who I am. When I look at my siblings, my brother, my sister, and me. My brother entered the army a fascist right-winger, left the army a socialist and a liberal and an activist. My sister entered the army as a model, top of her class. By the time she entered the army, she made tshuva. Now she has 11 children. 50. I entered the army. I was written to the Technion to be an engineer. I left the army a writer. So I'm saying, for us, for all our family, it was like an X-ray thing. We could, if we would have no obstructions in our life, I would probably be an engineer, and my sister the best-looking psychologist in Tel Aviv, and my brother would be a high-tech millionaire. But there was something in the army that kind of put us a mirror to us, and kind of derailed us, I think, in a good way, which made us discover who we truly were.
Okay, last question.
So you mentioned before that the statement by Gershom Shalom that the Hebrew will release the demonization in the Hebrew language, the demons of the Hebrew language. There's also the opposite statement by Anton Shamas of his project as a Palestinian Israeli writer to de-Judaify the Hebrew language. I'm wondering, and the Hebrew in the 20th century has undergone many of these evolutions and revolutions. I'm wondering what you see happening to the Hebrew language, where the Hebrew language is now after it is being used to express crimes against humanity and forced starvation, pogroms in the West Bank against Palestinians, all have been articulated in Hebrew. I'm wondering where you see how that impacts the language going forward.
So as somebody who's really who's obsessed with language, the feelings that I have that with the trauma of the 7th of October, then basically people kind of gave up on most of the words that they have, kind of locking in on a certain set of words. For example, the word Amalek, which I don't know if all of you know.
Everybody knows it.
Yeah, so Amalek is very, very dominant in the discourse. I never heard this word in a political discourse before the 7th of October. This is a word that basically justifies killing children and women, because it's God's will. The idea of words that are associated with vengeance, which is really our Ben-Gvir's present, to Israel. Like a way of speaking about things in a very reductive manners. Every person who suffered loss in the 7th of October, he or she, they are heroes. Why? I don't know. In my definition, a hero is somebody who takes a selfless decision that helps people who are not him. You know, if I get murdered and raped, I was unlucky, and I could have been a wonderful person, but I'm not a hero. But this idea of kind of creating classes, almost like castas, saying, you're a survivor, you're a hero. You're this, you're lefty, you're a traitor. You know, kind of putting those stickers. So what I find about the Hebrew language is that the Hebrew language allows a lot of ambiguities and obscurities, and it's kind of built on them. It's the foundation of the language. And that right now it seems as if we're training it to something that is much simpler and simplistic, and it's a language that is not good for asking questions. It's just good for giving orders. And in those discussions, I keep trying to introduce those old words and to rattle things a bit. You know, it's funny because I just republished an essay that I published in the 2014 Gaza war, talking about how words form the way that we think. And I said that we should stop using the word peace and exchange it with the word compromise. Because peace is something that is God-given. And you don't have to give anything for it. You know, God could give us rain, God could give us key. It's out of our jurisdiction. But compromise means that if we fail, we failed, not God. And it means that if we want to get there, we need to give up on something. So I really, really feel that this kind of following peace, staying hero, choosing hero, all this kind of thing, it feels for me like some kind of a petrification process. We're not using our muscles to their full extent. We're not using the language the way it wants us to use it. We're not getting to those complicated and contradictory and obscure places that really had made our culture. We're kind of making something that is streamlined and pointed, I think, to hell, if you ask me. But it's really like all this plane had become this very narrow arrow. Everything is functional. Confusion is weakness. You know, who wants to live in, or who wants to abuse the language in such a way?
Etgar Keret, Mr. Urban Challenge. It's been great to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. Toda rabah.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.